Welcome to fabulous Lake Tahoe, your local's guide to the very best of America's year-round playground. I'm Jack Durst, and I am here at the Mont Bleu Casino Resort for the 2014 Elevate Your View Lake Tahoe Leadership Summit. This is the second of 3 videos. If you're interested in seeing the other 2 videos, click the annotation on your screen right now to be taken to a playlist of all 3 Tahoe Leadership Summit videos. This video features a breakout session on the tourism industry in Lake Tahoe, featuring Dana Williams, who used to be mayor of Park City, Utah, Carl Ribaudo, and several other important members of the Lake Tahoe community. Check it out.
Because we're going to keep the engagement continued. My name is Jenn Boyd. I'm with Weidinger Public Relations, a PR firm here in South Lake Tahoe. My boss has had his business for about 30 years, and I've worked there for about 7, so I absolutely love it. We work with a lot of different clients, both on and off the hill, that are tourism-based and events and PR and marketing, and enough about that. But we really want to start off with, we joke in the office, it's pretty much one of the greatest questions of all time. What do you want? This portrays in any different thing, in many different aspects of life. So what do we want as a community to make the change that is going on? As you know, in Tahoe South, we have had a big tipping point. We're on the uptip of a huge economic downturn of epic proportions. We have had that shift of transition where a lot of businesses and properties are doing huge upgrades and renovations. There's brand new businesses and amenities in town. It's really that point that has gotten the ball rolling. You know, after several tough winters, we now are very hopeful that we'll have a good season, and we've really shifted that transition of different type of recreation base. And even in a tough winter, we still have the opportunities with our snowmaking and grooming. So huge opportunities, and there's this big shift and big change that is happening. But one of the biggest things we want to get across here today is how can we get engaged? It is not only our responsibility, but it is our opportunity to start making that difference that we keep talking about. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank Mont Bleu for hosting us. I want to thank the Chamber and the Leadership Lake Tahoe group for putting this on. What a great event, great turnout, and thank you for coming to our tourism panel. So I will introduce our guests. We have Dana Williams, and he is the former mayor of Park City, and he just told me this is his first public speaking post-office.
As a citizen, it's awesome. As a citizen. How do you drop F-bombs now?
So he retired from his role as mayor in December of 2013 after serving for 12 years. During his 3 terms as mayor, he became the dominant figure in Park City's post-Olympic era. He worked on land preservation and responsible growth, and in 1999 was named Rotary Citizen of the Year. He has been a strong advocate for affordable housing and quality of life issues. He championed the city's new skateboard park and continues to play and sing the highly popular Mother Lode Canyon Band. He wanted to get up and sing this afternoon. You know, maybe next break we get it.
I'll sing my presentation.
And we have Carol Ribaudo, the president of Strategic Marketing Group. With more than 20 years of experience in the travel and tourism industries, Carol Ribaudo leads his firm with hands-on knowledge of seasoned professionals, focused specifically on marketing analysis and competitive strategy development. He blends a highly skilled background with an acute awareness of current trends to develop effective solutions for his clients. Carl is a strategic thinker and always looks to deliver unique solutions for his clients. He is a leader and innovator in the tourism industry, introducing such concepts as the use of business modeling to focus bureau-based performance, the introduction of passion-based marketing strategies, and the concept of destination authenticity. He has also completed the first ever Rural Tourism Strategic Marketing Plan and Sustainable Tourism Plan for the California Travel and Tourism Commission. And we have Carol Chaplin, the Executive Director of the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority. Carol has been the Executive Director of LTVA for 6 years since joining the company in June of 2008. That just seems like yesterday. I know. Her primary responsibilities include administration, marketing, public and community relations. She has over 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry, including hotel attraction management, operations, sales, and marketing, and food and beverage. Prior to her current role, she has served as the Director of Sales and Marketing for Airmont Lake Tahoe at Zephyr Cove. That was from 2002 to 2008. For 2 years before that, from 2000 to 2002, she was the General Manager of Hornblower Cruises and Events at Lake Tahoe. She has her degree at San Francisco State University. So those are our fun facts. So we'll give you a brief rundown of how we're going to do today. We really want to focus on getting involvement from you guys. So we are going to ask that we keep the questions kind of on point and really get them, ask your question right away, and because we want to be respectful of everybody in this room so that we can have a lot of people weigh in. So we have a few quick questions, and then we'll open up the floor. So have your notes and questions ready. All right. So here we go. Basically, if you didn't make the tourism forum or haven't read or been to Park City in a while, there's been a lot of shift and transition going on in Park City, and we really want to touch on what has that done and how does that translate here as a model for Tahoe South.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, and it was amazing to hear discussions this morning and how many similarities we have. And I was extremely impressed with how many younger faces are in this group, so thank you for participating. In 2001, 80% of the business that Park City had, tourism-wise, was in 100 days in the winter. Not a very sustainable business plan. It was not uncommon for Main Street businesses to close for a month or 6 weeks in the summer, and we turned into basically a ghost town. Created more and more of an unsustainable workforce because people could only work 4 or 5 months out of the year, and then we were absolutely dead in the water. So what we had a goal when I took office of most of us came to Park City because of skiing or because of the winter, but we stayed because of the summer. And we just loved what we had. So we had this epiphany, and we hired a group to come help us on what do we do to try to increase the summer business. And then we thought, okay, what do we like to do? Well, we like to utilize the trail system. We like to go to music. We like to close Main Street and have parties on it. And then we said, okay, well, screw everybody else. Why don't we just do that and invite everybody else to come? There's all, and it's worked. And there's also a direct correlation, and I'll talk to you about it a little bit more this afternoon, correlation between, unlike you guys, we have no public land around us, not 1 acre. It's all 100% private. All of our mountain ranges around Park City are private. There's been a direct correlation in the increase in tourism with the increase in preservation of open space. So when I took office, we had 2,000 acres of open space and 50 miles of trails. When I left office, we had 10,000 acres of open space and 400 miles of trails. We're now hitting 80%, 90% occupancy in the summer. And it was a direct result of things that were actually relatively low impact to our community, but put butts in beds, kept people busy. Now, some businesses still close. This is the season of 2-for-1s on Main Street, so all of us that can't afford those restaurants can now go for the next month or two. And then the second biggest point I wanted to bring up to you was we were deeply divided, mostly through the 90s, on tourism and its effect on us. And we ran a campaign with the chamber that had posters around town that said, please don't bite the tourists that feed you. And so, that was one of those things that I think in terms of trying to get buy-in to people and saying, look, we call ourselves a multi-seasonal resort, not year-round, because in the spring and the fall, we don't care if anybody's there. It's awesome, it's why we live there, because the spring and falls are so great, but people don't tend to want to spend their disposable income in mud months. And so it's like, fine, let's not try to push these times where it's going to be really hard to get people to be here, but let's try to bring them in the summer. So we refer to ourselves as a multi-seasonal resort. And the summers, and we've changed the 80-20 to 60-40 in 10 years. So it's gotten extremely busy now in the summer. Every weekend we're now trying to look at what weekend we can have to have a non-event event. So it's a start.
Yeah, Park City has over 200 events annually, so we'll get some questions towards that later. But I do want to turn to Carol now to give us a little background of where we are in our community, give a quick update, and what Tahoe South is doing to promote itself, and where our change in recreation has been. We've heard a little bit of this, but just touch on it a little bit more.
Well, first of all, if you don't know anything about Tahoe South, actually that's the brand that we have developed for the South Shore destination, and we can have some questions around that probably as well. But the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority is the destination marketing organization, or DMO, that has been charged with promoting the community outside of its boundaries. So you won't see a lot of advertisement in town unless you see our logo. But we try to get outside of our boundaries in order to get heads in beds, or butts in beds. And I like that better just because it sounds better. And that's what we do. We're funded we're a by-state funded agency, so we have a lot of masters. I have 2 boards, and our funding is from the Tahoe Township on the Nevada side and the Tourism Improvement District on the California side. We get no funding from the city of South Lake Tahoe anymore. So where we are in terms of a tourism destination is we call ourselves world class. We promote ourselves as world class. I think that we would all agree, at least on the premise, that we're really not world class at this point, and we're still suffering with aging infrastructure and the amenities that don't necessarily go with the world-class visitor looking for some upscale luxury and outdoor recreational opportunities. So it is a bit of a challenge for us to go out and promote Highway 50 in its current position. We're very excited about actually where we are now with some of the new developments going on, the landing coming online, the lodge at Edgewood coming online soon. Mont Blue's doing renovations. Lake Tahoe Resort Hotel has just done renovations. The Chateau will be, pulling down that fence, I think on Monday is what I understand. So we are starting to see some of those amenities that we can really boast about, and of course, along with Weidinger Public Relations, we spent a lot of time this last year talking to the media about just that. Heavenly Mountain Resort is going to be putting their summer activities at the top of the gondola there. That's going to be huge for us, and we can go on with that. So I think we're on the cusp, to answer Jenn's question about where we are in terms of really promoting this destination to against our competition. We got a little ways to go, but we're poised and ready to go. If we can deliver that service model that goes along with it, that's another challenge. So when I was in Park City recently, it was interesting because I saw within the ranks of the officials there, the electeds, as well as the people that lived there, if there was a real sense of purpose and of shared focus, and there was not a lot of the underlying divisive, it's kind of, what are you doing for me today? And I think that's the next step that we need to take as a destination, so that our visitors, when they come here, they feel that too, and they feel like a local, which is what everybody likes to do when they go someplace else.
Absolutely, thank you. A perfect segue for what Carl is going to touch on is...
You're right.
We'll get to a little bit more of the challenges and everything, but Carl, we really want to know, from your perspective, what do you see as our top urgencies to make this transition that we need?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just to piggyback on some of these comments, I remember Park City back when and what it is today. And I ask myself, how come we missed that boat? What prevented us from missing that boat? And it all came down to a conversation I had with John Weidinger, who's with Heavenly Ski Resort, and it was urgency. we don't have urgency in this community. If you talk to the organizations, the government organizations or city municipalities, we don't have urgency. And so my comments are prefaced by urgency. We need to move fast. Secondly, I look at tourism a little bit different. Carol's trying to be out there talking about an experience and a perception. I look at it in terms of revenues, in terms of money. Okay, show me the money. As an economic system. And when I look at our community, I see a system that is not optimized, does not work extremely well. And so my comments are based around that. First is the downtown. The city has to be much more of a catalyst in transitioning that downtown from those old beat-up hotels into something better that we want. And what we want is fewer, okay, on a shrunken footprint so that we can be environmentally sensitive, but we want higher rates and better spending people to generate more revenue, which generates more jobs, which generates better monies for environmental improvements. Secondly, we have a horrible obstacle to change. It's called the Tourist Accomodation Unit, or TAU. Originally put in place many, many years ago to cap how many lodging units Tahoe can have. It's had a perverse backwards effect, unintended consequence. We have a community of 12,000 hotel units. We don't need more than 6,000 or 7,000 of them, ever. And we've done the analysis last year. We did an extensive analysis that showed our destination versus a comp set of destinations, including Park City, and shows what they generate in room rate versus the lodging base that they have. And we're so out of whack. But the TAU creates an artificial obstruction for change, and that has to go away. We need to wake up tomorrow and say no more TAUs, okay? And we can get into that much more later. Third is the Loop Road, okay? Very controversial, but it's the only opportunity to change the land use patterns and the experience that Carol's talking about. It will happen in this generation or it will never happen, okay? It is a must, in my opinion, a must-do thing, especially if the federal and state governments are going to pay for it. We will not have another opportunity to change the fundamental land use patterns in this South Shore into something better. If we don't change it, we got what we got. And I'm saying this. And then finally, I'm really looking forward to Gaming 2.0. At some point, the gaming industry is going to have to reinvigorate itself. Tribal gaming has cost us about $130 million in gaming revenue and 7,000 jobs, closed schools and all the rest. What's the next vision of gaming? And it's integrated with recreation, I know that, but what is that beginning to look at? So I think we have a lot of opportunities. I don't want to get too pessimistic here, but we have to make real changes, and we have to have an urgency about that. Or you'll be sitting here, half of you will be sitting here in 5 years, the other half will be long gone, saying, you know what are we doing? So.
Great. Thank you. And all right, we'll do one more question for Dana, and then we'll open it up to you guys. So get ready. And I'm going to play past the mic because we're recording. So you just raise your hands, and I'll have my helpers. So that's how we're going to work the rest of this panel. So really, what we want to talk about is the alignment is critical of what you've done in Park City, working with the city, the county, the state, the legislative, the chamber, the VCBs. Can you speak to that of how we made this happen in Park City, and how long did it take, and who were some of the leaders, and just give a little recap of how that works so we can get a basis of some of these questions for us to talk about.
How we work with the state isn't great. We are a pariah in the state of Utah, a dot of blue and an otherwise nation of red. 3 years ago, our legislature passed a resolution that as Utahns we don't believe in climate change. Last year, they set aside $5 million to take on the federal government and turn the national parks over for mining and gas leases. So we have some pretty fundamental differences of opinion with the state. We had a really bad image in the beginning of 2000 with our state. That it's those people up on the hill who are rich, who are not of Utah, who blah, blah, blah. And we brought in some advisors, and when I came to Utah, I was an alfalfa farmer. And so they said, you have to do this personally, because you'll get in more doors around the state with your agriculture background than you will as the mayor of Park City. So the first thing I did was went to all the mayors in rural Summit County, where we are, and just said, what have we done to, excuse my French, what have we done to piss you off, and what can I do to change that? Because we will always be respectful. Then we went to the neighboring county, Wasatch County, which Heber City is in, and we said, can we pass a non-binding resolution to talk to each other? And they turned it down 6-0. So I met with the head of their mayor after that, the head of their county council after that meeting and said, look, we'll walk away in 4 months. Why don't you come up with the idea that let's go do a non-binding agreement with Park City, and they'll say you're freaking brilliant and we'll move forward. So they came out and we let them take credit for the idea of bridging the gap, because it's not about who wins, it's about getting what you want done. The state, our former governor, John Huntsman, who ran for president, ambassador to China, he worked with us so much on trying to protect the brand. Because needless to say, you come up with good zoning, good planning, good preservation of your historic areas, everything else, and then people come in, and because of the amount of money they want to bring, the state looks at it and says, we're going to override your local planning and zoning, because we want this economically. And our former governor bought into that brand and how important that brand of who we are is. The second part of that had to do with what is that vision that created that brand, and how do you get everybody in your area to buy into it. The third thing was getting the federal delegation from the state of Utah to buy into us. And so that means going and meeting with Orrin Hatch, and it was Bob Bennett, it's now Mike Lee, and Mike Lee we've had a tough time with. I'm not a member of the Tea Party, and he's either as most people in our community. But to get them to understand actually that here's a community that as a whole, including the greater Park City area, the basin around us, puts almost $750 million into the state's economy. So for that type of thing, maybe you can stop referring to us as you people. And so for those people on the hill. And plus they think that it's all, Park City, when I took office, 30% of our community was owned by second homes. It's now 75%. It's second home community. So that's had a blessing and a curse in the state of Utah. If you own a second home, you pay twice as much in property taxes as you do a primary resident. So to a certain extent, God love them. Our schools are awesome, our roads work, infrastructure is good. And so, and we actually do a celebration every year of the second homeowners. And we brought in an advisor that spent 3 days in our town. He came in and he had this smirk on his face. And he said, what do you put in the water here? Because you all have the same smirk. And I said, we feel god-awful fortunate about where we get to live. We're very lucky. And he said, do you realize how much people will pay to spend a week to get to live like you do? So acknowledge it. You're a funky little mountain town. You're a funky little mountain town. And embrace it, enjoy it, and invite the world to participate in it with you. And don't buy into the people in terms of outside influence that want to fundamentally change who you are.
All right. I think that sets the stage perfectly. So we'd love to start opening up for questions.
My name is Kim. I'm really curious because you mentioned brand. Do you have a design review board in your city?
Architectural design?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Because regulation is a dirty word in this community, but I really think that we need a board that looks at design.
Yeah, that's a great question. How many people have actually been in Park City? So most of you know that the downtown is a historic district. Last year I celebrated 50 years from when my parents first bought a little property for $375 in Park City in 1963. And in those days there were 700, 800 residents, 680 of them were drunk. And the fun thing to do on the weekends was to go push over the old miner shacks in downtown. Those miner shacks are now $1.2 million. And so, and we just redid the historic district guidelines And the real estate community went crazy, local people went crazy, but it's kind of like, wait a minute, this is how we've advanced our tourism. I mean, aside from the summers, part of it was historic preservation tourism, and part of it's been eco-tourism. So we've been able to branch out because of our planning and zoning, and that's the thing that goes to the brand, is that you have this defined criteria that, and I'll talk about this a little more, but we just finished a general plan, and it took us 5 years to finish a general plan. And the neighborhood sections in the general plan were written by the neighborhoods. So we did public meetings with them and said, okay, what's unique about this? What can we tell people that's special about it, and what do we preserve about it? So I am a big proponent of define what you want as a community. What I'm not a big proponent of is having elected officials to tell you. I think our job is to be the voice of you, not to tell you what's best for you. And so, basically, if you're going to the community and saying, all right, we're going to have 10 meetings, show up or shut up, kids, and tell us what it is you want so we can codify it and make it what our vision is, and then we're able to accomplish things. And more people are on board.
Next question. Over here.
Thanks. Dana, can you tell us what you were able to accomplish regarding affordable housing in Park City and how you accomplished it?
Sure. We have the opportunity to actually talk to a lot of the resorts around, especially the West and especially Colorado. There is an association called CAS, the Colorado Association of Ski Towns, that I think there's a resort in Idaho, Jackson Hole, and Park City are the 3 members of CAS that aren't in Colorado. We were a blue-collar, working-class mining community. And so we were celebrating that as, God, this is part of our history, while we're watching every other little community around us be inundated with our workforce. And what we decided was that one of the core values, and I'll show you some slides on this later, one of the core values is our socioeconomic diversity. 25% of our community is now Latino, and that community lives in our town. 40% of our community is working or middle class. And so there was a concerted effort, there was a fight, but we know we'll never house all of our workforce. That's just geographically impossible because we're such a small area, box in canyon. But what we decided was, you know what, let's take in every neighborhood sections and mix the affordable housing into existing neighborhoods. Now that went over great. But there is no definitive proof that anybody's property value went down ever. And in fact, it's the other way around. And so rather than saying, okay, we're going to put those people, those are a reoccurring theme in my talks, we're going to put those people in 600 units on the perimeter of the city. No, we mixed that group into the city so that they are a part of us. I got some slides in the last project we did that was severely fought by the neighbors, and when it came out, the project was nicer than anything they lived in. So that shut them up. But there's a bigger deal. I think there's a more ethereal question in terms of who should be here. And I think to try to get our community to buy into the fact that, one, God loved the working class of our town, God loved the middle class, who creates businesses, and that if we didn't participate from the government side of this, we wouldn't have that. We would all be commuting in from 30 miles downstream.
Natasha?
I had a question more directed at Carl about the TAUs and just wanted to learn more about that statistic as far as, you said 12,000 units?
Yeah.
I'd love for you to put that in context for everyone as far as what that looks like as compared to other visitor towns, and also what the potential solutions are.
Yeah, just to put it in context, Park City has about 5,000 or 6,000 units. Our average daily rate is about $99 in this community. Park City, it's in excess of $200. Okay, when you look at Monterey, when you look at Front Range of Colorado, when you look at Santa Barbara, we are over here, and everyone else is clustered over there. And so the economics are so perverted. We built a lodging base for a $500 million gaming industry. Our gaming industry is $190 million. Okay, we used to have 10,000 people employed in gaming. We have 3,000 people or less in gaming. We are so out of sequence, but there's so much friction in the regulatory system. The ability to change is so difficult. That's why we have a built infrastructure that doesn't even come close to matching the natural environment. And the further that gap goes, it's harder to sell people on the idea of protect the environment. They look around and go, yeah, well, what are you guys doing? You know, and so I think that's the problem we have. The other problem is, and I've said this to the city manager, so I'm not saying anything out of line, we need to generate $250 million more of revenue in 10 years in this town, or we have tons of problems. Okay, we have tons of problems. I just, and I don't see the urgency to it, and so we are out of sync with our competitors and other sort of special destinations, if you will. I can spend, come to my office, I got hours of this stuff, if you want to come to my office.
Hello, I'm Courtney. I was just wondering if you could discuss the loop road, because I'm not really familiar with what that is.
You want to take that?
I can talk a little bit about it.
I'll jump in.
Yeah. Actually, you know, if you're interested in the whole disparaging, you know, kind of room rates and occupancy to the competitive destinations that we look at, Carl did do the study last year that we participated in. It's called the South Shore Vision, and it does go into that loop road as well. You can find it on ltva.org if you want. It's sitting up there, and it's really interesting from the standpoint of the oversupply, which makes our demand lower in terms of some of those units. And so anyway, so the Loop Road project, really what it is that it would widen the sidewalks of the downtown core tourism core, so that we could have walkable, pedestrian friendly retail, restaurants, you know, that same ambiance that you get in Heavenly Village and what you'll see in the Chateau, and it will narrow the actual state highway by one lane so that we can accomplish that. And then your transit would be hopefully more prevalent in that. But the whole concept really is to help the casino core, and we're calling it a tourism core, to develop another source of revenue and also kind of respond to the demand that we see the visitor wanting, which is, I want to get out of my car, I want to leave it there, and I want to walk all around all day and shop and dine and people watch and ride my bike and rent a scooter or whatever it is, but we just don't have that now. And so that would incorporate that downtown area into a much more user-friendly space.
Let me just piggyback real quick on that. I have sort of this mental list of what I call great places, and in my little mental list, I have places like Park City's a great place, Aspen's a great place, Bend, Oregon's a great place. These are great places. What they all have in common is walkable areas. And if we're ever going to be and aspire to be a great place, we have to get there. Is it a big undertaking and a massive amount of change for a community? No doubt. Is change hard in this community? Way too hard. But we have to think bigger and imagine greater, or we are forever where we're at. And I'm not sure that meets the needs of not just people in this room, but people, more importantly, people outside.
And with that particular project, it may sound very tourist oriented again, and there will be some people that will say, well, you're doing that for Nevada again, and what about California? And what about the Y and stuff? Well, we need to start someplace, and that is where most of the beds are for tourism. But the concept really is to blend the residential experience, the resident experience with the tourism experience. When you go to a tourist destination, you want to be with the local people. You're looking for that experience. So it's not like you guys are, you people like that. People stay over here and, and you rent a room from us and you dine over here and the rest of us are going to go over here. It's to integrate those populations so that everybody can have a much more meaningful experience, locals and visitors as well.
And I'll just add to that real quick that it is you can find out more information on the project and where it's currently at. It's a Tahoe Transportation District project, and there's a lot of information, tahoetransportation.org, and it is currently under environmental review. So basically they're looking at these 5 different alternatives to see which is going to be the most environmentally sound. There's been a lot of community involvement and input to get to these analysis, so that's a whole presentation, but hopefully that helps answer your question on what the loop road is. There's a lot of places we could go with that, but thank you. I know we had a question over here, but we'll go ahead and go with Doug and keep it moving.
This is for Dana. How are you guys funding your marketing campaigns, and how much is your campaign? How many visitors do you have a year? So we can compare it to our visitors. And then how do we start to get our town more tourist friendly? Because in this town we hear a lot of, the tourists are here again.
Right.
And it seems to be a huge problem when they're not being friendly with tourists.
Steal Sundance from us. Let's see. I think. Sorry, what was the first part of that question?
How are you funding ours or funded through
funding marketing. Transit room tax. We do not have a transit room tax in the city limits. Summit County charges a transit room tax. So they get all of that money. That funds the chamber to the tune of $5 to $6 million a year. The chamber gets from transit room tax. And then we use another section of that transit room tax to help offset the cost of the public transportation system, which for us is free. And in terms of increasing tourism, it's amazing how things like a free bus ride, people go, oh my God, this is awesome. How do you do this? And so we fund that. And then the second part was, see when I get into more than one question.
Tourist friendly.
Oh, tourist friendly. I think one of the things that we try to get to some point to, and probably the biggest event that, what's the right word, pisses off the locals is Sundance. We're inundated with people who, don't you know who I am, and I'm entitled to this, and everything else. So I was kind of only kidding earlier when I said, let's just do what we want and then invite everybody else. That's actually true. There was a vision of let's do things that we like to do here, that we can all do as a community, regardless of socioeconomic background, and then invite everyone else to do it. Sundance is by far the top $68 million in 16 days are dropped into the state of Utah's economy. For that, I can deal with JLO. Plus, I've gotten to sit with awesome bands in the last 10 years. But I think the big thing was, again, trying to get people involved in the events that we have so that they feel that there's ownership of them. We were talking about earlier, we were trying to ban plastic bags, and the council still hasn't done it. But what we did was we took 10 grand and we said, okay, let's put up this really cool cloth bag that has the nonprofit logos and the city and the resorts, and let's give it to all the lodging people and the bus drivers and the vans that shuttle people. And they give them to tourists when they get there. Here's 2 free cloth bags. Welcome to Park City. Please don't use plastic. Get them to buy into those things. So there's kind of that subtle social engineering to try to get people to participate in those things. And I think it's really helped.
Let me add something because I'll tap to Carol's word here. One of the things that the LTVA did that most people don't realize, very subtle but very profound, is exactly what we're talking about is most of the marketing, when you go to business school, which I did, they tell you how to do things, I think I did this way. And you say, okay, what's the market want? You do all this survey work, and the market wants this, this, and this. Well, we threw that out, and we said, what do the locals like to do? Locals like to ride the road bike, locals like to mountain bike, locals like to paddleboard. And the LTVA's built their marketing plan off of what locals like to do. So we've made that shift, or the South Shore has made that shift, and you're seeing that more and more and more. And so I think there is a sort of little secret sauce in there to get locals more engaged. It just takes time to do that.
So if I could just add, there's certain events that we do, like on June 21st, we do a thing called the Taste of Park City. You know, especially with walkability and bikeability, we have a 600-foot elevation change on our main street. You know, so when we did the free bike program, they all end up at the bottom. And then your carbon footprint went up because they had to use trucks to put the bikes back in the racks, and then they end up at the bottom each time. But Taste of Park City, we put a dining room table at the top of Main Street that goes all the way to the bottom. And it's basically a local event. It's, you know, maybe 20, 25 bucks, and every restaurant comes out of their doors and serves on the street. And it's like dinner with 3,000 of your closest friends. And it really is not a tourism-oriented event. It's really catered toward, this is a thank you from the restaurant industry to the people who support them in the times when they're slow. And it's these kind of just silly little things that like make you proud of where you live.
That's silly, by the way. Be proud where you live.
Jason?
This could be directed at Dan. One of the hardest things when a town is gentrifying is dealing with the grandfathering. And so, you know, somebody goes out on them to improve their property and builds a new property, but then right next door, there's an old building that hasn't had any renovations for 30, 40, 50 years. And we see that this pandemic across, you know, in our town. What do you guys do in Park City to deal with that, to elevate the bar?
Sure, there's lots of things in our town that have been worthy of protection, so the grandfathering of in areas like the historic district is absolutely fine. Geographically, we're so much smaller. So there's a lot of grandfathering things that we don't really worry about because a lot of things just aren't grandfathered. And so I don't think we have that. We haven't really experienced that issue, I think, as much as you do. And when needless to say, I've gotten to see almost every resort community in the Rockies and in the West in the last 15 years. And you guys remind me a lot of Estes Park, Colorado, where it still has Dick and Jane's Dewdrop Inn. And you know, I mean, and with all due respect, but they have Rocky Mountain National Park right there. So they have several million people that are coming through there. They don't have to think about it because, one, they get to get away with saying, I'm grandfathered on this. We don't have, the only things that are really grandfathered in our area are the individual neighborhoods. So there are 3 or 4 neighborhoods in Park City that you're not allowed to do nightly rentals, period. You know, we want to maintain the integrity of the year-round population, so we don't allow people to nightly rent. And we had, and then there's neighborhoods that we certainly encourage it. So those things that are grandfathered, people tend to almost cherish now. You know, thank God this neighborhood isn't open to this because we have kids and we have all these things that are unique to those particular neighborhoods. So we haven't really had a lot of issues with grandfathering problems.
How did you finance the historic preservation?
Oh, good question. We basically take, Park City has a budget, this is going to be shocking, $60 million a year for a town of 8,300 people. It's staggering. And so it's property taxes, business licenses, sales tax generation. The state, I don't know how you do it here, the state comes in and takes 50% of our sales tax generation and gives it to other communities who didn't plan well. And then our school taxes that the state takes pay for 11 separate school districts in the state of Utah. And so basically I think, and I'm sorry I'm losing, I started to go off there. What was the main point there?
How did you finance the historic preservation?
So basically what we do is we take at least 1% of our annual budget and put it into a grants program. So we try to keep a minimum of $1 million in a fund for grants. When historic district homes were 40 or 50,000, people really needed that 5 to 10 grand in order to put a foundation under a miner's house or to try to build it back up to the original historic character. When they're $1 million, they don't really need the grant anymore. And the real estate community has gotten very good at being very clear on, here are the criteria, here's the book. If you're going to buy in this district on what you can and can't do. So know this before you come in. And if you don't want to do this, go to these neighborhoods. So we really don't have to spend a lot of money anymore on historic district grants. It's basically, when I left office in January, there was only about $30,000 left in that fund.
Carol, I have a question about the blending of the locals with the tourists you brought up. I think we're about the same ratio, aren't we, about 70% vacation homes here?
You know, that's the number that I have in my head.
She's within the margin of error.
Yeah.
It's a large part of our clientele at my company, and it may be a little surprising they consider themselves locals. So, you know, how do you blend them to go to state line? Because none of us here go to state line. Because we have to pay for parking. And I think the city's going the wrong way with more paid parking.
Well, I can't
What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I could talk to Dana, but they go to town every day on paid parking. Believe me, there's paid parking in Park City, but they also have a free bus service. You know, I don't know that you get away with, you know, our largest market, which is Northern California, is very used to paid parking. You can pay up to $50 a night at your hotel. So when, you know, for paid parking in San Francisco, and from that perspective, we're a value here because our larger resorts and our smaller resorts don't really have paid parking. So honestly, from my perspective, the paid parking thing, you just got to get over it. It is going to be the way of the world, and it is a revenue source. And if you don't want that revenue source, you have a chance, right, you know, this year to vote on that particular issue. I think if you go down the state line, if you go to Heavenly Village, I'm converted. I go down there, and it's not very expensive, and it's a great experience. And the chateau will be across the street. By the way, that's not paid parking, so you'll be able to go there. As far as the second homeowners, it's interesting because I believe, Dana, if I'm not mistaken, second homeowners their homes are taxed at a different rate than full-time residents. And but they also have incentives in place so that they can do improvements to their home where they can have a mother-in-law unit and rent it out. So there's this kind of, you know, this deal. I thought that was a very interesting concept, and you know, and so their funding, you can see where some of their funding has gotten very creative. So I don't know whether I'm going to answer your question really. I think really. The truth is that if we get the bike trails built, if we change that downtown core to a walkable, pedestrian-friendly space, I know that when we did the Linear Park here in town and when we did Heavenly Village, that whole ambiance changed overnight, and I think it will again. So it's a matter of, you know, natural kind of evolution. I think hopefully, maybe I'm Pollyanna, but.
I think there's two pieces to that. When you look at municipal improvements, municipal economies, there's not one in this country that did not transition without infrastructure improvement. You cannot market yourself out of a bad situation in terms of infrastructure. You have to physically change the infrastructure. You look at any downtown, whether big city, small city, the resurgence, the genesis started when somebody changed infrastructure. I've looked, I can't find an example of somebody sort of marketing their way out of 40% occupancy annualized. It just doesn't work. You know, the issue of paid parking is, you know, you're either for or against it. I've not seen any data to suggest that paid parking impacts visitation. Not last summer. I have the luxury of working all over the country in many jurisdictions. I have clients from Virginia to California, and I've never once seen paid parking as a deterrent. I just, have it. Now, it may be, and maybe it is, and I just haven't seen the studies, or, and each place is a little different, the way it's set up and so forth, I don't know. But I just haven't seen, I paid for parking. I was in Santa Cruz getting some coffee at Santa Cruz Coffee Company, or I just don't know. It's a tricky issue. And I think that issue in this town is endemic of other subterranean psychological issues. We need a psychiatrist council.
If I could add, but I won't be that deep.
Please, yeah.
Our whole downtown corridor in 2001 had parking meters. And so before I was in office with that, and I kind of threatened, anybody see Cool Hand Luke? Remember that? Yeah. I threatened to get real drunk and go around with a pipe cutter and cut all the tops of those parking meters off. And we got rid of 76% of the parking meters downtown. And so what we've done, we had a big celebration. We dressed up in colonial outfits. We announced on the 4th of July that in honor of 1776, we're getting rid of 76% of the parking. And what we decided, the philosophy behind it was, if you need to park 50 feet from that restaurant you want to go to, fine, pay for it. If you're willing to walk 2 blocks, we'll make it free. And so, but I actually tend to agree that the majority of people who probably visit you don't care. But the majority of you who live here hate it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm with you, I hate it too. And our locals will say, I'm not sure if it's true, but they'll say, we will not drive downtown. Take a freaking bus. I'm sorry. I told you I'm out of office, so I can use that words. But I don't know that that's necessarily true that people don't come downtown. But we did limit the amount of parking to, and there was a conscientious effort that if you have to be that close to something, then you can pay $1 an hour. And then we raised it to about $50 an hour to help pay for an event that we do every Sunday during the summer when we close off half the street. And there isn't any paid parking. But it's also a revenue neutral parking system. So basically what we do in terms of what we generate off of that only pays for the enforcement.
The whole locals thing. And I'm a business owner in town, and there's definitely a division between the prices I charge for locals and then the prices I charge for tourists. Because I offer locals discounts, and I was wondering if Park City does things like that, because we have shoulder season and then we have busy season. And if I were to give the same deals during shoulder season, I might not be able to survive here.
I was mentioning 2-for-1s. That's probably the biggest deal. But I mean, if you go into and I spent the last 4 years in office, I had 3 jobs, which I'll talk about in the next session here on who gets to serve in government. But I had lost my full-time job my second year of being in office because I wasn't spending enough time at it. And I became a barista. And you don't need anyone, do you? Because I'm looking. There would be such a major outcry, I think, if that got out. That, I own a $10 million second home in your community and you're charging me more, and yet I'm paying to put your kids through school. So the big thing we do is during the mud seasons, we do 2-for-1s and things like that when they don't tend to have a lot of tourists in town, but yet it does give the locals almost what you're doing, but it isn't something that is making the second homeowners or tourists angry.
This is just to go back to the parking. I'm going to harp on this, but I was born and raised here, and it's sad to me to see people complain. No offense. Very nice gentleman. To hear about the paid parking. And I understand because I went to live at Lakeview a lot last year, and I got ticketed when I didn't know there was the paid lot that's now there. But I'm sad because that money is going towards something good. And then there's free parking so very close that you can find, and there's a lot more of it. And it's sad to me to see that on the ballot there's going to be a measure to remove this paid parking when it could help our community so much. And I wonder, going back to Dave Metzlin's talk about making these meetings and these things that are normally seen as bad, turning them to empower people. make them something inviting. If we could do something like that, or if you've seen in the LTVA some sort of opportunity to make this.
The people in this room have a very unique opportunity, as you know, from the generational standpoint. And I need to separate myself, but I think, you know, if I look myself in the mirror, I'm going to have to acknowledge that. But from what I see from this group of people, you're not afraid to be courageous and stand up for what you want. And that's what's so great about today, and that's what's so great about the group of people that I see coming up in this community, is that you can do this. You can make those points. We're going to be there to support you, but quite frankly, they're tired of listening to me and Carl. And you have a much more effective voice at this point in time, and I encourage you to take it. It doesn't take much to get 30 people in a room. I did it yesterday with the school district in Douglas County, and it made a difference, hopefully. We're going to have to write tail on that one, but you know, that's the public process. What is very unique about Park City, and if you haven't been there, I really encourage you to go there. There is a trust in the government and the relationship between government and the local population, and they collaborate and they work together to find solutions. There's some rubs. There's like, I don't want paid parking, and you know, I don't want that in front of my shop and everything, but there are some very, very unique relationships in that town. They have a liaison, a business liaison, Dana, right, who does nothing but work with that kind of contentious, you know, or not contentious, but friction until they work out a solution, and it's all about that compromise. So, Molly, from your standpoint, we're right there with you. We're at those meetings all the time. Half my day is at meetings, and sometimes I wonder what I did, but you guys can do this, and I hate to like get on that soapbox, but you have a unique opportunity, and you can turn this around. And I'm really sorry that I don't see any electeds in this room today.
We're going to talk about that in a few minutes at the other session.
Because if they're not listening to you, you're going to pack your bags and go away. And you know, these problems are not going to be changed. And so anyway, that's,
you know, there's one. I know we got to run, but one thing to piggyback on that. It's really not about paid parking. Paid parking is a metaphor for something else. It's fear of change. Okay, every issue that comes up in this town has an opposition. Okay, whether it's a loop road, whether it's paid parking, you come up with something tomorrow, there will be a constituent who opposes it. Okay, and so the paid parking, it's really not about dollars and cents per se. Okay, it's about fear of change, where I just don't like that change, and that's where it sort of gets this critical mass of focus. But in my analysis, many communities have gone through this. It's just almost amazing that we torture ourselves over it so much. It's really a fear of change. The great thing is your generation is looking for change. Okay? So as Carol said, do everything what Carol said. Okay?
One of the things you could actually look at, is, one, the problem we had was when there was no meters, business owners parked, filled Main Street with themselves and their employees. So it didn't work. We did hang tags, parking hang tags, and if you were local, you got 50% off, so you're paying 50 cents an hour. And maybe that's something that you could potentially talk about before this vote, because we already have hang tags.
$40 parking pass.
And is there a discount from the meter price?
$40 year round.
Free?
$40 a year?
We're not making enough money on it.
That's why we don't have a $63 million budget.
All right. Well, I wish we did have more time because these always go too quickly. But we really want to thank our panelists for spending the time being here. I just want to conclude and say that we really are at this great opportunity to really empower, and there's lots of energy, and let's just keep it moving because we're ready to start making a change and go forth. So, go team.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this video is part of a playlist. If you click the annotation on your screen right now, you'll be taken to the other 2 videos in the playlist, which will help you see all of the videos in their proper context. Yes, I know it's a lot of content, but it is really worth it to watch it all the way through. So stay tuned to Fabulous Lake Tahoe, because there's a lot more coming up in the month of May and June. In the month of June, I'm going to be covering America's Most Beautiful Bike Ride like I do every year. I'm also going to be covering the Wagon Train Parade and several other events to be mentioned. There's going to be a June concert report. So subscribe to Fabulous Lake Tahoe to see all of those things as they happen. And thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in sharing this video or putting it on your blog, I want you to know that I am perfectly okay with any of my videos being used on anyone's blog or website. Just credit me. I am perfectly cool with it. So stay tuned to Fabulous Lake Tahoe. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. It really helps me out. Thank you, and keep Tahoe blue. Bye.